Hey, what's going on, guys? Roaring Turkey here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about avatars and new players, and if you're a new player or you are looking to get new players into the game, what avatars I would recommend to start learning the game with. There's going to be a couple of them in this video. We're going to have some short and sweet infographics, and without further ado, let's just jump into it. First off is Avatar of Air. So every avatar here has three star ratings that I've given them: initial difficulty, difficulty to master, and meta relevance. There's no science behind this, it's all just my opinion. But basically what you kind of see in the Avatar of Air's trends is what I'm looking for in all of these avatars. A low initial difficulty so that they're easy to pick up. They have a high difficulty to master, which in my opinion makes it more rewarding. You're going to get more out of them the more you learn how to play them. And they're going to have a pretty decent meta relevance where they're a strong avatar in the grander scheme of the game. And if you take the time to play them out, you're going to have just a strong deck going forward for however, if you want to play in tournaments or locals or however you choose to enjoy sorcery. So yeah, Avatar of Air, we got 2 stars on the initial difficulty. It's not she's not too crazy of an avatar. Her ability is a little, you don't notice how strong it is at first, and this is kind of why there's 5 stars in difficulty to master. But her turns play out very similar. It's like you're gonna play a minion, you're gonna do something with that minion or with your avatar ability, and then you'll pass. It's very just play something, do something, pass. There's no crazy shenanigans that other avatars get into. There'll be some crazy turns here and there, but in general, the turns play out very simply. The difficulty to master is because once you really learn how to make use of this ability, we will get into how Avatar of Air teaches players how to play in the next slide. But 5 stars there. There's a lot behind the scenes with her. And 4.5 stars on the meta relevance. She is a powerhouse. She has one tournament. She's was a finalist in the last Sorcery League. Very strong competitive avatar. So looking at her general playstyle, she is a moderately fast aggro deck that uses advantageous positioning to push damage. So she's not the fastest aggro deck, not like Fury Road or Charge, but it's an aggro deck. You're looking to push damage. You have a lot of flyers usually, which helps you find that damage, and her ability being able to reposition units to find those attack angles. She has a really good defensive plan, which we will talk more about in the next slide, but that's a big reason why she is so strong, is because not only is she coming at you fast and aggressive, but it's kind of difficult to come at her in the same way. And she teaches the importance of movement with her ability being able to fly around, being able to reposition your units very easily. It's honestly, not only is it very good at learning, but she's very forgiving. You can make some mistakes with moving your guys around, and her ability is going to kind of be able to reset you in a sense. She mostly wins through combat damage with the occasional Rolling Boulder. And Rolling Boulder is that key card that really teaches you the importance of positioning, lining up shots, and having a unit in position to do what you need it to do. And for the creative players out there, she can splash any element really. She is Avatar of Air. You're going to want air, but you can go a fire route for pure aggro, and you can also splash water or earth for more mid-rangey plans. Her key cards include Bottomless Pit and Free City. These are the defensive sites that enable her defensive plan, where her ability can move any unit, herself, her units, and even your opponent and their minions. So when your opponent starts attacking you, if you have these sites anywhere near that minion, you'll be able to fly that minion into these hostile sites and take care of it. And it puts your opponent in a pinch where if you attack Avatar of Air, you have to be willing to lose that minion because they can die to a Bottomless Pit or Free City. Gyre Hippogriffs is just one of the best minions in the deck. They're very aggressively statted. 4 mana, 3 with charge. They're one of the best charge minions in the game. They're great for pushing the boulder. They're great for just pushing damage. They're lightning bolt on a stick. And then you have the rolling boulder, which we talked about just now and in the last slide, but this is like the ace in the hole for Avatar of Air. You can tap it, a unit taps to push it, and it deals 4 damage to each other unit along its path. At the positioning that Avatar of Air has, all the free mobility in her ability makes it so that you're able to do so much with this card. Even though it may go to your opponent at some point and they will get to use it, you'll always just get better pushes with the boulder. And honestly, sometimes it's all you need is that one push to secure the game for yourself. All right, so now we're looking at Geomancer. So Geomancer I have him at 1.5 stars for his initial difficulty. The reason for that is because sometimes new players get a little confused with the rubble, like what exactly is the purpose of the rubble, how do you use it. Sometimes they think that like if there's no other site destruction in the game, that like that is all rubble is for. Just kind of understanding like what rubble, the whole deal with rubble is the only like learning curve with Geomancer. He has 3 stars on difficulty to master. There's really not a whole lot happening to master Geomancer. You might learn a bit about positioning to make the most of your rubble flips, and also just learning how to maximize your early game rubbles to get the most sites out without having to move Geomancer. His meta relevance is at 3 stars. It used to be more, but he got hurt by the 50-30 changes in AL. He like won the Gen Con tournament. Was it Gen Con or Sorcery Con? I forget. I think it was Gen Con, but he like won that. He was quite the force in like the last Sorcery League as well, before AL like season 5. He fell off a bit, but he's still a very strong avatar. His general play style is mid-range. He relies on having bigger minions and better removal, 2 things where Earth excels compared to other elements. He generates card advantage through ramp, and again, if you master your like early rubble placements and your first 3 sites, you're able to get to 6 mana with only the 3 starting sites, assuming that they're all Earth sites. He randomly drops sites, so you don't need to worry about placements too much, like should I put this site here or there. When he's flipping rubbles, you don't know what you're going to get, so you just kind of got to deal with it. It sort of takes a bit of the mental load off you about having to think about where you're putting your sites. Although sometimes it hurts you because like you'll flip a Quagmire at like a really bad time, and you're like, why do I even have this in here? He demands a heavy Earth Atlas because that is his ability is all about Earth sites. So splashing another element is doable, but it's risky. I prefer to splash him with air just so that I have access to those blinks and flanking maneuvers, things that can reposition him and let me flip more rebels even quicker. So for key cards, we've got Crusade. Crusade is a very strong card in Earth. He's playing a lot of Earth. You're going to have a lot of minions. So it's a buff to all of your Earth minions. Earth can be snowbally this way, where if you're playing Crusade and Bannermen and Shield Maidens, you get this just unstoppable snowball of a force. Craterize, which is a great payoff for having a high mana curve. 8 mana to deal 10 is phenomenal, and then it's also going to function as like this board wipe, take out a site from the opponent. It's generally a good game when you're able to resolve a Craterize. Roots of Yggdrasil, and this was why Geomancer was at the top of his game a couple months ago before AL, because when Atlases were only 20 cards deep, you could more reliably hit Roots of Yggdrasil. And when you're resetting the game and setting everything off to rubble, Geomancer is going to have the easiest time rebuilding, and you're going to just redo all the card advantage you got in the early game. You're going to be able to like do that again, but even more so. So Roots is still a fantastic include. Usually you want to pair it with Sinkholes. It's not exactly the best craterized target, but you can also reposition it to get it into Sinkholes with Earthquake, one of the best removal spells in the game. It's 5 mana, you rearrange sites, and you burrow all the minions and artifacts on those sites. So the ability to move sites is very strong. The ability to have a semi-board wipe is very strong. Earthquake is just a lot of good stuff packed into one card. Okay, next up we have Flamecaller. So Flamecaller has an initial difficulty of 1 star. I don't really think there's too much you gotta learn with Flamecaller. 3 stars for his mastery. I have a lot of footage of Flamecaller, probably more than anything on my channel. And if you wanna, you could master Flamecaller by the end of the day if you watch my channel. And meta relevance is like 3.5 stars. He got a lot better with AL. He hasn't really done a whole lot throughout this game's history. He has like 1 top 8 in Sorcery League, I think. To my knowledge, that's all he has. But there is a lot of speculation around him with Arthurian Legends because of all the charge minions that got added to fire, and just, yeah, all the multi-fire threshold minions that are in the game now. It buffs him up a lot. The unfortunate part for Flamecaller is that some of the more meta avatars kind of get hated on in decks, and he sort of catches some of that. Like, people play Funeral Pyres to deal with Archimago, and that's going to hurt Flamecaller. People play Pebbled Paths to deal with the charge deck, and that's going to hit Flamecaller. So he's kind of getting like the worst of like both angles in a sense, because 2 key sites that people play to answer different decks are both going to affect him. So it kind of sucks there. His general play style, he is an aggressive, minion-focused avatar that can play at varying speeds. I like to emphasize that because a lot of people think Flamecaller has to be pure aggro. I think he is best as an aggro avatar, but you can play a slower, more mid-range or control game plan depending on how you build your deck. He has a strong kill shot ability that teaches the importance of positioning, in particular the importance of a line of sight, being able to aim a projectile and hit the target that you want. That is everything that Flamecaller is doing. He plays best from ahead when making the opponent respond to them. Even if you're playing slower, you want to be playing like minions first and faster than your opponent. You have a lot of minions that can do things without having to attack, and so even if you're not able to attack, you can pressure the opponent, make them respond to what you're doing, and then you're gonna save up all these minions for a big fire blast in the late game. And then he almost needs an air splash just because blink and flanking maneuver is so important for repositioning and getting that line of sight on your opponent. Despite that, there are a lot of good cards that you can play in those elements, and so even though you're kind of forced into fire air, the card pool allows for different styles of deck building. For key cards, we've got the Colicky Dragonets. These are 3 mana 3s. They shoot a projectile at the end of turn. The Quarrelsome Kobolds, 3 mana 2s, and at the end of turn they punch an adjacent unit. These are what I'm kind of talking about with units who don't need to attack to do something for you. You can sync these guys up too, and if like both of their abilities will deal 3 to something, so you're able to sort of remove your opponent's. It's great when you have these guys sticking on the board. Your opponent plays something, and then all you need to do is move these guys around so that at end of turn you're able to just kill a minion without really having to spend anything. That is when Flamecaller is really shining, is once you have your minions on the table, your opponent is now having to play after that, and they're just kind of not able to keep up because you're sort of killing his things for free. Infernal Legion is like a big example of this. 6 mana 6, and at the end of turn deal 3 damage to each other adjacent unit. He's a big late game bomb. He disrupts the board, and even after he kills things, he's still a 6 mana 6 power beater that your opponent has to deal with. And Morgana Le Fay, which is one of the best minions in the game right now. Spellcaster Stealth Genesis. She draws her own hand of 3 cards, spells, which only she can cast. So just a great value stick right there. Okay, and next up we have Sorcerer. Sorcerer, definitely one of the simplest avatars in the game. I give him 1 on the initial difficulty. I give him 2 on the difficulty to master, and 3.5 on meta relevance. Because Sorcerer actually is really popular and very strong. He just really hasn't had a fantastic showing in a recent tournament in a while. I remember he won something back in March, and I'm sure he's had a couple of top 8s since then, but not a ton. He hasn't won anything. He hasn't been in the finals of anything in a while. Again, he's very popular. He is a lot of meta decks like Fury Road and the new Charge deck. These are Sorcerer decks. He does have a very fair share of the meta, but I just haven't seen him actually win anything or even come that close to winning anything in a while. Difficulty to master is very small as well. I will get into it once we get into his play style, but a fairly straightforward avatar. Yeah, so his general play style, he's generally a fast-paced avatar that excels at low mana curves. You can do anything. I gotta emphasize, you can do anything with Sorcerer, but the best decks are aggressive and they are playing low mana curves, and they're not even generating a big mana pool. And going into that next point, Sorcerer has innate card advantage at the cost of larger mana pools, because if you're tapping to draw a spell, it means you're not tapping to play a site. So you're going to have to sacrifice bigger spells in priority of more spells. He's a strong option for most decks, best utilized in draw 2, play 2 styles. So most Sorcerer decks tend to be around, they get to 6 mana, and the average spell in their deck costs 3. You'll have some 4s, you'll have some 2s, and you'll have some 5s and whatnot. But in general, you're going to have a ton of average cost 3 mana spells, so that you get to 6 mana, and then you draw 2 and you play 2. And it works out phenomenally, truthfully. And really, the only thing you need to know about Sorcerer, the learning curve with Sorcerer, is when to play a site and when to draw a spell, because you do want to get to 6 mana and you want to do it fairly quickly, but sometimes you're going to just need that extra spell like on turn 4 or 5. It's the only thing that you really need to figure out as Sorcerer is when do you take the turn to get to 5 mana, and when do you take that turn to get to 6 mana. He can be used with any element and combination, but you should stick to 2 at the most, just because you're not playing a ton of sites. So you don't want to mess up your threshold. You want to be able to stick to 2 elements and be able to hit it fairly easily. A 2, stick to 2 attunement for each element, and you should be fine. 3 and 2 maybe. All right, so looking at his key cards, I really didn't know what to put here because there's just so many different ways that you can build Sorcerer. But basically, some of the best stuff for him that is for him is stuff that accelerates your mana ahead of time. So Imperial Road is kind of a staple. The deck Fury Road is kind of named after this site. It lets you sort of play 2 sites at the cost of playing 1 site, so you're able to just accelerate that way. Philosopher's Stone, which by all means, if it's not in your budget, you don't need a stone in order to have a good Sorcerer deck, but it certainly helps. Abundance, if you want to go that route, and Frontier Settlers as well. Those 2 cards honestly don't see a ton of play in Sorcerer decks, but again, there's so many good cards that you can put in Sorcerer. It all depends just on what your deck is doing, but in general, Sorcerer is going to having spells that enhance his mana, because he doesn't really want to spend too much time doing that himself. All right, and lastly, we have Elementalist. So Elementalist is pretty simple. Honestly, her ability, you don't even have to really understand what her ability does. She has a 1 for initial difficulty, a 4 for the difficulty to master, because there are just a lot of ways that you can go about playing Elementalist, and a 4 for meta relevance. She did win the last Alpha Beta Sorcery League, season 5, I believe it was, and that was pretty crazy. I think she is still really strong. I think she'll get better with time because her ability, having one of each threshold, is just very crazy. So her general play style, she leans into control strategies, mainly focusing on fortress decks and water control. Fortress decks are like decks that play a lot of defensive sites and sort of make it difficult for your opponent to come at you while you generate like card advantage and like a bigger mana pool and go into some crazy late game stuff. She's able to dip into each element without any help from the Atlas. This is really great because like four color good stuff is kind of like the name of the game with her. You're able to get all of the best like one threshold cards, play those, and you're able to play more like no threshold sites, which can usually be very powerful but not very viable with other element avatars. She has no tap ability, which means she's not as stationary as other avatars, and that can be a very big deal. Sorcerer, for example, which we were just talking about, he's like tapping to draw a spell almost every turn. He's gonna stay put for like most of the game. But Elementalist, once you like have your sites, for one, you can always just tap to draw a site, and you can reach like some big mana points that way. But you can also just like move forward, be in position to cast powerful spells and things like that. There's a lot of flexibility with Elementalist. And as I kind of stated earlier, she's able to play much more non-threshold sites than other avatars, so you can really take advantage of some really powerful effects that other avatars aren't able to. And so going over her key cards, what we have here are some of the best one threshold spells that Elementalist loves to run. Common Sense is great. It's just one earth, and you get to search your spellbook for any ordinary card, so it's a very powerful tutor. A lot of decks that run Common Sense run like their own sort of package for it. Land Surveyor, who just 2 mana, draw on a site, is fantastic. Dapple Vampire is just one of the best like sources of life gain throughout the game. 5 mana for 4, airborne. She heals you. And Poison Nova, which is one of the best board wipes. These are like, you can kind of see how all of these are very good in a control shell, and like these spells existing are why Elementalist kind of leans into a more control-y strategy. And that'll do it for today, guys. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment letting me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions for future videos. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great day.